So as you can see, we're doing word problems here. This first one we're going to do is actually the easiest type that we're going to throw at you. Once I show you how to do it, you're going to know exactly what to do. Number 1, the height of a javelin in feet is modeled by h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 79t plus 5, where t is time in seconds after the javelin is thrown. How long is it in the air? That's the question we need to answer. Now let's think about this. We have a javelin, we're throwing it. The question we're answering is, how long is it in the air? When do we know that the javelin is no longer in the air? How do we know that it will no longer be in the air? When is that? If we throw an item, how will we know if it's no longer in the air? When it hits the ground. When it hits the ground, height is, if something's on the ground, what is its height? 0. So that means h is 0. So for this problem, h is 0, t, the other variable, is unknown. So we have two variables here. In the equation, we have two, h and t. H stands for height, and t stands for time. And that's going to be in seconds. So for this problem, we know that h is 0 and t is what we're solving for. So our equation, h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 79t plus 5. We know that the h is 0, so let's replace it. 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 79t plus 5. This equation is set up to be solved because I have everything on one side and a 0 on the other side. I know that normally this is flipped, the 0 is on the right and this stuff is on the left. You are welcome to flip the whole equation around if you want to. You can put all of this on the left side and 0 on the right. It will still work. Guys, is there a question up there? Is there a question? Nope. Thank you. From here, we can either factor it or we can use quadratic formula. I'm sure most of you would prefer quadratic formula, and if we were taking the test, that choice would be yours. Today, the notes, it's my choice. We're going to factor. We haven't done some factoring for a minute, and we need to practice. So, how many terms do we have here? 3. This is a trinomial, so we're going to use that ACB chart. So we have negative 16 times 5, that's negative 80, and b is 79. Let's go ahead and set up the factors, set up the answers. So we have t's this time instead of x's. Notice that a is not 1. It's negative 16. So that means we're going to have to divide both of these terms by negative 16 when we find them. Let's find those numbers. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 80 and add to 79, yes. What is it? 1 and negative 80? So we're going to use 1 and 80. However, we want a positive 79. Well, I repeated back to you 1 and negative 80. You didn't correct me.
No, I tried to.
Okay. Sorry, everybody, he was right. It's negative 1 and 80. That's correct. Let's check real quick. Negative 1 times 80 is indeed negative 80, yes. Negative 1 plus 80 is positive 79. Yes, those work. So I have t minus 1 and t plus 80. Now remember, I have to do either slide or divide. This first one, negative 1 over negative 16, before I slide the 16 over, because clearly this is not going to divide nicely, I do want to take care of the fact that I have two negatives here. Reminder, when I have a fraction and a negative on top and bottom, those are going to cancel and make a plus. So let me fix that real quick. This will become t plus 1 over 16. And then I'll bring this one down, t plus 80 over negative 16. Now for the next step, I'm going to push the 16 to the front of the t. We have 16t plus 1. 80 over 16. We do want to check first and see if that divides nicely. And it's a negative 16. And it actually does. That is just negative 5. So we get t minus 5. So this is how this factors. Now that I've factored this and it's equal to 0, I'm going to split and solve. So we have 16t plus 1 equals 0. And t minus 5 equals 0. Unfortunately, I don't have enough space to show that work underneath, so I'm actually going to rewrite both of those over here and do that work. So we have 16t plus 1 equals 0, and t minus 5 equals 0. (16t plus 1), that's a plus 1, I'll minus 1 on both sides. 16t equals negative 1. Let's get rid of that 16. We'll divide it on both sides. T is negative 1/16. Other equation, I have t minus 5 equals 0. So I'm going to plus 5 on both sides. T is positive 5. So we got two answers. T equals negative 1 over 16. And remember, putting this back in terms of the story problem, we're finding our time t in seconds. So negative 1/16 seconds. And then we have 5 seconds. So here's the thing. Since this is a word problem, we have to think a little harder about our answer. First off, A javelin cannot be in the air for 2 different periods of time. It's just not possible. It's going to be in the air for one length of time, and that's it. So that's the first problem. We have 2 answers here. One of them cannot be correct. The second issue, I'm going to see if someone else will point it out, is going to be the wrong answer, and it's clearly wrong for a reason. What's the wrong answer here? Can't have negative time. That's the other thing. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up with a positive answer and a negative answer. That negative answer does not work in the real world. So, this cannot work. It's not reasonable. So, it must have taken 5 seconds. On the test, if you circle both answers, you will lose credit because you're saying that both of those are correct. In a word problem, they are not. Yes.
If you solve it the other way, would you get the same answer?
Quadratic formula?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Did you do that by chance?
Yeah, but it wasn't the same.
Okay. I'll take a look at it later. There could be a mistake. It could just be how the end work came out as well. So make sure you only box the correct one, and even better, mark out the wrong one just so you and I both know you know it's wrong. If you just leave them completely untouched, I will assume that you think both of them are correct and I will take off the point. So make sure you show somehow, some way that that is wrong. Questions on number 1? Okay. Number 2, find the x and the dimensions of the rectangle. So here they tell us that this rectangle has an area of 432 inches squared, and then we have our 2 sides, x plus 4 and x minus 2. Let's refresh our memories. How do you find the area of a rectangle? Length times width. Which are the 2 sides they gave us. Now it's okay if you mix them up, but technically, length is going to be the long horizontal, and width is going to be the vertical. So let's fill this in. Area we know is 432. Length is x plus 4, put that in parentheses. Width is x minus 2. Let me dispel a rumor, because I'm sure some of you are already thinking it, that you can just split both of these up, set them equal to 432, solve for x, move on with your life. Unfortunately, it is not that easy. That rule only works if this number over here is a 0. So, we're not there yet. We need to be able to move the 432 over here with everything else. Before we can do that, we need to multiply these two. They're called binomials because they both have 2 terms in them. We need to multiply those together. In Algebra 1, they taught you a 4-letter acronym, also is a 4-letter word we use in real life, to help you remember how to multiply these together. Does anyone remember what that 4-letter word is? I can tell you the first letter is an F. Oh. Thank you. FOIL. So they taught you the FOIL method back in Algebra 1. That's fine. If you don't remember it, or don't know how to use it, not a big deal. If you do remember it and like it, feel free to use it. What FOIL does is it walks you through the proper steps on how to multiply these two things together. I like to explain it in a different way in Algebra 2 because we're going to do problems that are harder than this, and not now, but later. And FOIL does not work for those because when the problem is too big, FOIL fails. So, basically what you need to do is you need to distribute twice. First, you distribute the x into here. So let's do that. X times x. Yes, x squared. X times negative 2, that's negative 2x. You just put them together. So distribute the x. Then we distribute the 4 in the same way. 4 times x, that's 4x, and it's positive. 4 times negative 2, that's negative 8. Bring down the 432. Not yet. If you do this in the correct order, you will have two like terms and they will always end up in the middle. So negative 2x and positive 4x. So we have x squared. And then negative 2 plus 4, that's positive 2x. Bring down the minus 8. Now we have a trinomial on the right side. We can move the 432 over here to join the rest of it. So subtract 432 on both sides. We now have 0 on the left side. X squared plus 2x. Negative 8 minus 432, that's negative 440. At last, we are able to actually solve this. We have a trinomial on the right side and then 0 on the other side. 3 terms. We're going to use an ACB chart. A here is 1. That's the best kind. We don't need to do all the slide and divide stuff. So 1 times negative 440. That's negative 440. B is 2. I'm sure many of you would have rather done the quadratic formula on this problem. Negative 440 is quite a large number. Large numbers come with a long list of factors. So this is going to take as long as it takes. I'm going to go through the factors unless someone gives me the correct numbers before I get to them. Does anyone have those numbers yet? Okay, let's get to work. Let's start with the most obvious pair, 1 and 440. Clearly, these are not going to be right. By the way, forgot to point out, this is a negative 440, so we're going to be subtracting over here. So keep that in mind, we're subtracting those numbers. Do you have them? Go ahead. 5 and 88. So if I subtract those, 88 minus 5, I'm going to end up with 83. So unfortunately, those are not it, but we're working towards it. By the way, if I subtract 440 and 1, that'd be 439. You have them? Close. You have the right numbers. Sign is moved. So we have 20 and 22. And then, how am I going to get a positive 2? Because if I subtract those, I will get a 2. Which one has to have the negative on it? The 20. 22 minus 20, that is 2. Thank you, Gage. So let's just check. Negative 20 times 22, that is negative 440. Yes. And then negative 20 plus 22, that is positive 2. Yes. So we have 0 equals x minus 20 and x plus 22. We are almost done. I'm going to move this over to my right side here as I've run out of space. 0 equals x minus 20, x plus 22. Now we may split and solve. We have x minus 20 equals 0, and x plus 22 equals 0. Let's solve these. X minus 20 equals 0, so we'll plus 20 on both sides. X equals 20. X plus 22 equals 0. We're going to minus 22 on both sides. X equals negative 22. Reminder, we're still doing this in the context of a word problem. So negative answers are not allowed. So we can go ahead and cross that off. X equals negative 22 is not a reasonable answer. So that means x must equal 20. So we know x is 20, and let's add a label. It is in inches. We are not done yet. If we go back to the directions, they say find the x and the dimensions of the rectangle. We've found x, so now we have to find the length and the width. So length, L, is x plus 4, which is 20 plus 4. So L is 24 inches. And lastly, we need to find the width, W. W is x minus 2. So 20 minus 2, which is 18 inches. Yes. What is it? Oh, the area? 432, right? Well, that's what they gave us in the problem, right? It's okay. I would have much rather found the area. That would have taken way less time. Okay. I understand it's a lot of work. That's why you just got to be patient with yourself. Any questions on number 2? Backside. I will be using quadratic formula on these two. If you were to do factoring instead, you will still get the right answer. So that is a personal choice. Number 3. A relief package is released from a helicopter at 1,600 feet. The height of the package can be modeled by the equation h equals negative 16t squared plus 1,600, where h is the height of the package in feet and t is the time in seconds. The pilot wants to know how long it will take for the package to hit the ground. So this is very similar to number 1 on the front, where h is height and t is time in seconds. So when it hits the ground, again, that's where h is 0. So we're going to do the exact same thing that we did on number 1 on the front. We're going to put a 0 in h's place, and then we can solve directly from there. Our equation, h equals negative 16t squared plus 1,600. We know that h is 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 1600. We have 0 on one side, everything else on the right side, on the other side. So now we can continue. Again, I'm going to use quadratic formula on this problem. Let me write that down for anyone who needs it. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I recommend writing this down on your own paper because I'm going to use this in number 4 as well, and I'm not going to write it on both problems. Okay, I only have 2 terms here. Which letter am I missing? A, B, or C? B. I have A, that's attached to the t squared, and then C, constant by itself, no x. B is missing. So what's B? 0. All right, let's plug those in. Keep in mind, if you use an x, because clearly we're supposed to be solving for t. If you use an x, not a big deal. But if you do notice that it's a different letter, please be aware of that. So we're solving for t. T equals negative b is 0 plus or minus square root of b, so 0 squared, minus 4 times a, which is negative 16, times c, which is 1600. All over 2 times a, which is negative 16. Reminder, we can use our calculator to figure this out. Let's simplify this down a bit. Negative 0, that's just 0, plus or minus square root. We're going to use our calculator to figure out the number under the square root. Make sure you're practicing typing this stuff in. Don't just let me do all the work. 0 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 1600. Put this in your own calculator, please. Make sure you get the same answer that I do. If you type this in your calculator correctly, you will get 102,400. On the bottom, 2 times negative 16, that's negative 32. From here, we have 0 plus or minus, and let's see if that's a perfect square. On this calculator specifically, if you haven't found the square root button yet, the x squared button is down here, and right above it, you can kind of see the little square root symbol. So you're going to hit second, and then this x squared button. That's how you get that on the calculator, if you haven't already figured that out. So we're taking the square root of 102,400, 320. 320 is the square root, so this is a perfect square. All over negative 32. Any questions on the calculator specifically? Buttons? Okay. We're almost done. As you can see, we have really nice numbers here. Let's split this up into 2 fractions. We have 0 over negative 32 plus or minus 320 over negative 32. 0 over negative 32, that's just 0, plus or minus 320 divided by negative 32, that's actually negative 10. 0 plus or minus negative 10. Let's split this up into the two math problems. We have 0 plus negative 10. 0 plus negative 10, that's just negative 10. And that's going to be in seconds. And then we have 0 minus negative 10. 0 minus negative 10. And you should know when you have two negatives in a row like that, they're going to cancel and make each other a plus. So this is actually positive 10 seconds. Again, we can't have a negative answer, not when this is a word problem. So 10 seconds is the answer. Any questions on number 3? Okay. Number 4. Find the dimensions of a triangle whose base is 4 more than 6 times its height and has an area of 208 square inches. First off, let's start with a picture. I'm going to draw a right triangle since it already has the vertical height in it. The base is the bottom of the triangle, and then the height is going to be this vertical here. They tell us that the area is 208 inches squared. Square inches, inches squared. And they give us some more information. They say this triangle has a base that is 4 more than 6 times its height. So let's turn that into a little math expression. So first off, we have a 4 here. 4 more than 6 times its height. More than, some students will too literally translate this and write a greater than symbol. That's not what they're asking for. Does anyone know what symbol I'm going to use for more than? Plus. In addition to. Plus. 6 times its height. How would I write that?
6
Yep. 6 times its height, 6 times h, that's 6h. So this is the expression. I'm going to flip the 4 and the 6h around because typically we do that order. So that's the base. The base is this information here. So base is 6h plus 4. Just switch the order there. They don't give me any new information about the height, so the height is just going to be h. All right. We have everything we need. The only thing left is the formula for the area of a triangle. Area equals, anybody remember?
Wait, it's like
It's like a what? Okay. Nope, that's volume. Nope, that's rectangle. Nope. It starts with a half.
The height is the base.
Yes. I'm only going to flip the order because it usually is 1/2 base times height, but yes, that's correct. 1/2 base times height. So let's fill this in. Area 208 equals, instead of 1/2, I'll just write 0.5. I know most of you prefer decimals. And then the base is 6h plus 4. And then the height is just h, so that didn't change. Now you can multiply these in any order that you like. I'm going to multiply these two together first since they're grouped together in the formula. So what I'm going to do is distribute this h inside of here. It looks backwards because the h is on the right side instead of the left side, but it works the same way. 208 equals 0.5 times h times 6h, that's 6h squared. H times 4, that's 4h. Now I'm going to multiply the 0.5 into here, distributing. 208 equals, I'm going to do this without a calculator. Basically, I'm just going to divide both of these numbers by 2. 3h squared plus 2h. Now that I just have an expression here, I can move the 208 over here with everything else. Minus 208. 0 equals 3h squared plus 2h minus 208. And we can finally do our quadratic formula. ABC. And I'm going to start it way over here. So this time we're solving for h. H equals, hopefully you wrote the quadratic formula down on number 3 above, so you can look at that. Negative b is 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 208. And that is all over 2 times a, which is 3. Bringing this down, we can drop these parentheses. This is negative 2 plus or minus the square root. I'm going to skip putting this part in my calculator. I'm just going to tell you, when you do this, you should get 2,500. On the bottom, 2 times 3, that gives us 6. Negative 2 plus or minus. 2,500 is a perfect square. Did anyone find the square root of 2,500? Gage? 50 is correct. Thank you. Still over 6. Now that I have 2 nice numbers, I can split it up into 2 fractions. We have negative 2 over 6 plus or minus 50 over 6. Don't reduce these until the very end. If you remember, we practiced adding and subtracting fractions in yesterday's notes. We're going to do that here. If they have different denominators, it's going to make that a bit difficult. So we have negative 2 over 6 plus 50 over 6. And negative 2 over 6 minus 50 over 6. Remember, you just add straight across on the top only. Negative 2 plus 50, that's positive 48 over the 6. And you should know that that divides nicely and gives us an 8. On the bottom, negative 2 minus 50, that's negative 52 over 6. And I don't even care if that reduces because I know this can't be the answer since it's negative. Since we're in a word problem. So, I'm going to squeeze my final answers in up here. H is 8. And we still have to find B real quick. B, we wrote over here, is 6H plus 4. 6 times 8 plus 4. 48 plus 4, which is 52. So B is 52, and that is in inches.